They said it. They finally said it. Use a primary. The PvP experience in Destiny has been smothered by many things. Double primaries and fixed perk rolls at the start of D2, horribly balanced abilities, that long time with Shatter Dive, overpowered special weapons and hot swapping, but the worst of these issues, the most insidious one, the thing that won't go away and has been souring the game for some time now, is the excessive amount of special ammo available in the Crucible. You see, what makes PvP special in this game is the crazy amount of weapons to choose from, and I'm just talking about primaries right now. All the archetypes, unique perk, and stat combinations. It's overwhelming at first, but when you find the perfect weapon and start putting in work with it, there's just no better feeling. Though that feeling has been dampened, crushed even, by one-hit kill weapons and the sandbox that just overall has way too fast of a time to kill. There's a never-ending list of cheese that has been the bane of my existence, and I'm sure many of yours going back as far as I can remember. Mountaintop, Revoker, Lord of Wolves, getting mapped by fusions, Jotun, Ariana's Vow, double GLs, bow, hot swapping. The list goes on. I could go all day, but you know what I mean. People using the type of strategies that take almost zero skill to execute and still produce highly effective results, only to pick up your special and do it all again. And if they run out of ammo, or die trying to pull off the cheese, who cares? They're getting 2 more kills worth as soon as they respawn, and there's nothing you can do about it. It's not fun. Go figure, This bad experience has been made possible by the broken special ammo economy. Bungie knows it, you know it, I know it, and they made it clear with what they said in the twit announcing these changes. Quote, "As we've increased the strength and prevalence of certain sandbox elements, too often the defeated player in PvP can't understand what killed them or why. We don't want players in situations where it's difficult to learn what to do better next time." So the question is, did this update fix the special ammo problem? Can you actually learn what to do better in the next gunfight? Now, after playing quite a lot of Crucible this week since the update, roughly 30 hours or so, across the new 3v3 Clash and Collision Labs playlists, Control, Competitive, and of course Trials, I can confidently say yes to both, with a few exceptions. But the thing to consider about this update is that more than just the special ammo economy was changed. And this obviously had an effect on how the experience feels overall. To briefly recap, body shot damage has been reduced, though optimal time to kills are unchanged. Ability cooldowns were nerfed by 15%, though you really can't tell. I'll talk more about that later. Super cooldowns were nerfed by 20%, and respawns, as well as heavy ammo spawns and tiebreaker capture points were reworked. A few notable nerfs came to target lock on SMGs, explosive payload, threadlings, Wishender, Fighting Lion, and Devil's Ruin. Now, these changes haven't shifted the meta too much in terms of weapons or abilities, except for 140 RPM hand cannons. They just don't have a range where they feel good within the sandbox. With exception to Ace of Spades. Ace still feels crispy. But as far as what was good before the update, and what is still good today, 120 RPM hand cannons, still slap, high impact pulse rifles, no time, messenger, still claps, scout rifles, DMT, Jade Rabbit, still effective and dominant at medium to long ranges. With the reduction of special ammo, auto rifles have more room to breathe, and are very effective on the closer side of medium range engagements, and are even starting to take SMG's lunch on certain maps. And for close range, SMGs are still very good, but have lost some edge with the target lock nerf, and are starting to receive some competition from autos in longer ranges, and sidearms in even closer ranges. Overall though, it seems that with reducing body shot damage and special ammo, the meta has fundamentally not changed, but in fact has been emboldened. This is a lot more noticeable on the long-range maps that currently flood the PvP playlists, where before the update, the prevalence of special ammo meant that a Jade Rabbit or a Hung Jury could easily be shut down by a well-placed snipe. Today, they're often unchallenged. And even if you do land that snipe, you're going to be out of ammo, and you're not going to get it back for a few kills. I mean, the enemy will just go right back to holding down the lane with Jade. And that brings me to what was my biggest worry with this update, team shooting. And the looming fear that we would go back to the old year one days of hand-holding around every corner, relying on team killing being the meta, and special weapons being non-existent. While this phenomena is pretty unavoidable in FPS games that don't have an insane time to kill like Call of Duty, the current sandbox, I think, strikes the best balance we've ever had between a one-hit kill cheese meta and the snooze fest of team shooting. Now, the hand-holding has increased post-update, but I only feel it on the old, tired, long-range maps that frankly need to be deprioritized in rotation anyway. I'm just tired of playing on Eternity, Midtown, Widow's Court. Unfortunately, we have to wait until May to receive our new map pack that is allegedly being built with a focus on 3v3 gameplay. But I would hope that Bungie takes note of how this current rotation affects the sandbox and goes back to a balanced selection more often featuring maps like Anomaly, Twilight Gap, and Exodus Blue. But even still, with the current dominance of long-range maps, the team shotting that is starting to emerge is very counterable. It doesn't require you to stack in a fire team and hold hands like you're at the altar on the day of your wedding. It can be shut down by working your angles, maybe working an off angle with a Titan barricade, a well-placed damage over time grenade, hunter smokes, just good movement and high time to kill close range weapons. At the end of the day, it's completely counterable and comes down to game sense, positioning, aim, which frankly is a sigh of relief in this game. For too long has game skill been trumped by insta-killing enemies with specials or undeniable team shot camping. Now there seems to be more of an environment for your decisions to matter and to learn from your failures. But what if you can't learn from your failures fast enough? What if the enemy team rolls you off the opening of a match? Can you come back? Or is it your destiny to get rolled into the cute little snowball you are and left out in the cold? This is the fear I had going into this update. What is there to keep you from getting pummeled if your team makes mistakes in the opening moments of a game? Well, in 6v6 there are a few. You still build special ammo transmat by dying to the enemy. It's small, but still there, and has a greater effect over the longer matches, though I think it could use a slight buff to help learning players not have a totally bad time. Maybe a scaling system where if you die multiple times in a row, like 2 or 3 plus, the amount of transmat you get increases. You get special progress on assists and capturing zones, so if you're struggling to land kills, there's ways for you to get back by being a team player. But in comp in Trials, the snowball is more apparent with how shorter the matches are and how capturing the point in Trials doesn't seem to give transmat. This puts a much greater emphasis on responsible use of your special and making sure you secure wins in the opening rounds of a match, which I find to be a more fun and actually competitive experience than what we had before, resulting in more primary dueling and an emphasis on map knowledge and game sense. Bungie seemed to be very intentional with the implementation of this system based on this quote from the TWAB reading. The goal is not to force players to utilize the double primary playstyle, but to encourage smart and measured special ammo usage. And I think they've struck that balance. While I did find some matches where enemies were running double primaries, their overall effectiveness seemed suboptimal, and I found for the most part that the more effective approach was to play your primary correctly and punish the enemy team with your special. Now, I don't think this is an issue overall, and what we now have is a much better system than what we had with special ammo pickups from defeated enemies before, and snowballing was much worse then. But what this does raise attention to is the bad aspects of the current matchmaking system. There, when you're running low man or solo and find yourself with teammates who are so mismatched in skill that it seems like they have to look down at the controller to remember where the buttons are, do I find myself getting absolutely pummeled by the enemy team with no way to recover. Bungie has addressed this in recent TWABs and explained in thorough detail how their current matchmaking systems work, but still noted that they have more work to do and will be experimenting with new systems in future updates. But I fear that with our historically low populations, if these matchmaking issues aren't addressed soon, many of the fantastic sandbox changes will be for naught. More mismatched lobbies will create bad experiences and drive away returning players hoping for a new, better experience. Still, I hold out hope that Bungie recognizes the urgency of fixing PvP overall, and I have a lot more trust now that they're keeping an eye on this side of the game through the PvP development strike team, given how well most of these changes played out in the most recent update this week. But even though this update was mostly W's across the board, there's still a few glaring L's that I haven't gotten to mentioning yet. That being the ability cooldown nerfs, or really the lack thereof, and the wet fart that was the alleged spawn changes. If I went into these changes blind, no knowledge of the patch notes, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that there was any change made to class, grenade, or melee cooldowns. Perhaps this was a very cautious decision made by Bungie, and they wanted to be conservative about how much balancing they mixed in with these fundamental changes to the sandbox. But I feel like this only upset the player base pre-update to hear that there was going to be an increase in cooldown times for it to ultimately make no difference in the sandbox post-update. If they were truly hoping to be conservative, they should have left the ability cooldowns alone and made a significant change later after acquiring fresh data. And the spawns? Still poor. I don't know how Bungie defines backfield spawns internally, but I found myself still running a whole lot to get back to the fight. And when there was a bad matchup, it was very difficult to get free of a spawn trap. Often it was too long before spawns flipped, sometimes multiple deaths in or near spawn before I was free. I noticed this more on Meltdown, probably because it's just a bad map. Still frustrating to see this laid out in the TWAB and to have such a bad experience in the live game. And this goes both ways too. I was noticing that my spawn trapping antics still worked on maps like Altar of Flame or Endless Vale. Again, could be bad matchmaking, who knows. Still, we're leagues better than the old days of dying to a golden gun only to be spawn killed again by that same golden gun. And again, perhaps the alleged spawn changes are overshadowed by bad matchmaking, but there is definitely more work for Bungie ahead of them. So, what does this all mean? Is PvP saved? Or is it still headed for the drain? To me, it's not so clear yet. There's still a lot of work ahead to fix matchmaking in a meaningful way. Beyond that are the glaring issues with super balancing, the dominance of well and bubble in comp and trials, and the questions of how to make the other supers in this game actually worth using and balanced in these modes. I mean, right now with the 20% nerf to super cooldowns, they're basically non-existent in trials. Only in a long 4-4 game do the wells and bubbles come out in the last round. Aren't supers a core identity of the game? Why would Bungie cut them out of trials almost entirely? I mean, isn't that what the new hardware game mode's for? And the lack of content overall? Shit, I mean, we still have a long 2 months to go before the map pack drops in May. Will that be enough? Are there more maps coming in the final shape? What about the year after? The more you think about it, the more existential these questions get in regards to the game as a whole. There's still a lot to be answered for over the lackluster year that was Lightfall, and even more trust to be regained if they expect a player base to stick around after the final shape. It seems that this update has managed to pull the PvP sandbox out of a metaphorical tailspin. Bungie's regained consciousness and is getting response on the yoke, but the plane's still headed for the deck. And it's a question of if they can get the nose back up before it hurtles into the ground. I want it to all pan out. I think it will. These changes are good, but there's more to fix if we want players to stick around. Only time will tell. If you made it this far, thank you. It truly means a lot. Let me know what your experience has been like in the comments. I'm very curious to hear what normal people have to say about this game. I'll catch you later.